segment we're about to do is very short. It's just sample challenges, but I feel like you already have a good sense of those challenges. I just want you to recognize that we all recognize some of the stuff that's going on. And I did put my clicker someplace. Oh, here it is. It's with the mustard and the mayonnaise in the refrigerator that only my wife can see, and I, of course, cannot see by standing in the refrigerator and defrosting it. So we go through and do that. But I thought we might sure we're very clear and on the same page. This is something the cat coughed up. No. This is something that might be a cat toy, but what's involved in this entangled mass? Stuff you learned, I'm going to include, but also the number of times you were nice to me and others. And then, extra credit for things not related at all to the evidence I'm seeking. Uh-oh. And then, stuff you did. You cleaned out the animal cages, you did homework, you did classwork, and then my personal mood and bias on any given day at any given hour of that day. Then, I've seen this in high school, middle school, but chances are this is occurring in elementary school. I've seen each of these things in 2024 used to significantly raise grades. I mean, one whole grade level. Any of that look familiar?
Last night's game. Changed last night.
Yes, sir.
I look at that and think, you're really saying that happens?
Oh, yes, I have personally witnessed this in America.
How is that possible?
Because people are kind of complacent about grading and think it's okay to use grading as coercion and bribery. They've been misguided, they haven't done the deeper dive. Steve, we got to get you out more to more states. Actually, I've seen that in Pennsylvania. One of the schools I attended was, or visited was Pennsylvania. And now I will say this. I do work with San Diego, LA, San Francisco, Seattle, Fresno, Arlington diocese, those are all dioceses, plus Tokyo and Guatemala. I've been working with the diocese and a couple in Europe, and I've seen this stuff. So it's not just public schools, it's dioceses too, that they do that. So it's like reward or something, or I need to bribe you to kind of do this. Oh, you want to get my higher grade? Give me a few extra points, clean up all my animal cages, or straighten my books, or do some service to school, and I'll change your grade, it'll go up, so you can play in Friday night's game. There's some of that sports eligibility stuff. Or Legos and robotics competition stuff. So there's a lot of stuff going on out there. Now, consider your grade from all this is 82. After all of that, that tangled mass, suddenly I legitimately as a teacher can say you're an 82. That's like me as their doctor, and you come in for a physical exam and I say, all right, show me your shoe size. Let's figure that out. Your waist size, your body mass index, your height, your overall weight, of course, the color of your hair, favorite astrological sign, and your age, and something else, your eye color, whatever it might be, and I go, you're about a 74. That means nothing about any of those things. It's not healthy, it's not a good thing to do. What's my index as a human? Your quality as a human is 81. What? No. We need to really disaggregate. We really need to, because that reveals the story. So, interesting emotional baggage. If I've done dozens of schools and I just stopped because I was getting the same result every time. So this is something to consider. If I walked into your faculty meeting and I said, everybody write down on a piece of paper, we're going to put an envelope, nobody gets to see what you write, but write down the number that means adequate. Out of 100 down to 0, or satisfactory, let's say. What one number means that? People say things like this, about 75. So they're like, no, I'm feeling more 84-ish. That's my vibe. Somebody else is doing this, 95 or higher. Otherwise, it's a soft bigotry of low expectations. You can't, let's settle for less than 95%. It's just not cool. Somebody else is saying this, you should see my class this year, 62, I would be happy. What tends to happen is that we have a 20 percentage points difference amongst the faculty. Yet those teachers then have the nerve to tell parents, oh yeah, you can totally trust the grades, they're accurate. You can't, unless you calibrate the evidence with each other. This is not urban, suburban, or rural legend. I see this all over the United States. Ready? Kid learns this amount, and it's a 4.0 or an A to some teacher, but it's only a B or C, or 3 or 2 to some other teacher, in the same building. Teaching the same thing, let alone across the diocese, or across the school district. And yet, they say the grades have integrity, and they're totally accurate. No, they don't. Unless you have literally sat down and done the anchor assignments together. Independent of each other, we turn around, and we grade the same thing, and it's like photocopies of everything. Then we turn back around and we would have put the same grade on it. Would that consistency be important? I hope. So we don't want the parent to say this, the one with the coffee cup there, or maybe a colleague. You said that was accurate, but she gave that an A, you gave that a B, and they gave it a C. We're all over the place. Do we want to have that integrity, that consistency? So I'm reminding you of this. It should be completely independent of who's doing the grading. The grade will always be the same score, if multiple people graded the exact same thing. And you have to decide if that's really the integrity that you seek, and I'm hoping it is. So this is some different standards. I'm going to risk insulting you by reading the bottom half of this description, but I really want you to hear what this is asking. So, how the use of specific art techniques and materials evokes the zeitgeist of an identified historical era. Are we clear what that means? Have we got that? Okay. What is the difference between an 89 and a 90? 1 dumb percentage point. Now, a 90 and above in some schools is an A, and 89 and below is a B. Or at least an 89 down to 80 is a B. So if you have an A, you're allowed to go on with this course or have these privileges, these rights. If you have a B, you're denied that. So a life of dreams fulfilled, a life of dreams deferred, Langston, based on 1 percentage point, which is within the statistical margin of error. There is functionally no difference between two students, 90 and 89. Yeah, you thought you could perceive a difference. Wait, when it comes to adding, subtracting fractions with different denominators, what is the difference between 84 and 85? And people say, the number correct out of the total possible. No! That's you mathifying. I'm a member of NCTM, National Council of Teachers of Mathematics, and I'm telling you right here, right now, I'm giving testimony. Do not worship at the math altar to find your grading credibility. That's you hiding behind numbers in math. What if I said 84 and an 88? What is the difference, the functional, big, discernible difference in mastery and skill development between two kids? One of 84, one of 80. There's no difference! So we are putting all these levels in, 100, 99, 98, 97, 96, 95, 94, 93, 92, 91, 90. All those different splitting of hairs on what an A is, when you can't measure it to that level of precision. Oh, but wait, it gets worse. How about a 1/10 of a point? My school district, 94 and above is an A. 93 starts the B's, just so you know. I had a child come to me with 93.4. Come on, Mr. Wormeli, you're alone in class, I don't have an A. I could have straight A's. It's 93.4, it's like so close. Can't you round that up? And I can't believe I did this, but I actually did. Well, it's 93.4. 0.4. If I round, which way will I go? You don't want me rounding. And then it made it worse. If it was 93.5 and higher, I'd be justified in rounding it up. So you need to work just a little bit harder, show me a little more oomph. What? No! I was hiding behind a 1/10 of a decimal point. I should have done this. Drop and give me 50 push-ups. No. I should have done this. Point blank, ask them questions about the standards that we taught. What about this? Tell me this, demonstrate that. And made an executive decision. Not totally with the calculation of the grade trying to justify that. So I'm about to say something that could be very frightening to you, but it's in our parents' handbook. And you tell me if this frightens you, scares you, or it kind of frees you and treats you like a professional, or both. Here we go. Dear parents, grades are first and foremost determined by a teacher's professional opinion as he or she analyzes your child's work against the evaluative criteria of a standard, not mathematical calculation that you see on Parent View or Parent Oracle, whatever you do for online grades. And teachers would be glad to explain their grade in a mutually agreeable time. But we have been trained how to analyze student products against evaluative criteria. Here's where they match the proficiency level, here's where they don't match. So their grade is this, not it has to calculate perfectly. That's how we justify it. -4, didn't have that. -2, didn't have that. +5, we have that. That's you tallying so you can really justify the grade tabulation, not necessarily to give the parents an informed opinion of the child's learning and their progression thus far. So you have to decide, would I like to work in a school where I have to justify and explain the grade based on analysis of student work against a standard? That's actually what you've been doing for 2 years. with Leanne and what I hear the diocese has been trying to teach you. And if that's still a struggle, let that be your focus for the rest of the year. That's a really important thing, is becoming evidentiary and analyzing student work against evidence you were seeking. That's a skill set. It overtly has to be taught. But wait, I've seen this for a valedictorian, and I've seen 1/10,000th of a decimal point. Summarily rejecting everyone else in the whole high school and elevating this one kid based on something that's too flimsy a premise, and there's no functional difference between them. 1/10,000? Let me remind you, valedictorians are valedictorians because usually they're very good students, but not necessarily the highest academic performing, the most earnest, or the most intellectual. What do you mean? Valedictorians tend to be valedictorians because they're rule followers and compliant. They're also good students, but not necessarily the highest one in the building you're trying to elevate above all others. Again, rejecting others. There are lots of kids who should be valedictorian who are intellectually, academically stronger, put more effort in, but they weren't compliant, they weren't rule followers to the nth degree, jumping through a teacher's hoops to do stuff. Second, following high school, it completely disappears. Your designation, your distinction, nothing changes because you were valedictorian. You just dissolve into the larger morass of humanity at a college or working or a military of some sort. There's no predictive value. Oh, you're valedictorian, you'll score better. So you need to decide, are we going to do that? Or maybe could we do the Latin system? Magna cum laude, summa cum laude, and so on. Anybody who gets that level gets that designation, and you find another way to see who's going to address the graduating class and who's going to get the scholarships. But valedictorian is one of the dumbest things we've ever done, and the whole thing you're doing is you're trying to sort children on a faulty premise. Why? Because of what this teacher realizes here. You cannot determine mastery to that level of precision. It's too fuzzy. One student to another. There's not that distinction. I remind you, in the 100-point scale, there are 101 possible scores. Do you understand that? 100 down to 0? Okay. The more levels you have in your scale, the more wildly subjective you will be teacher to teacher, and students are misclassified way more often and get the wrong response from teachers for where to go next in their learning. That's from work from Susan Brookhart and Tom Gusky and others who've done that research. So smaller scales not only increases the inter-rater reliability, you and I are very consistent teacher to teacher to teacher in what grades we put down, but it also keeps you from having this subjectivity. It's actually far more objective, especially if you and your other colleagues have sat together and goes, okay, what's like excellent, what's almost excellent, what's like basic, what's like not at all. If you've never had those conversations, then this becomes the Wild West, and grades don't have the meaning you think they should have. And we're trying to protect that. So we can give you lots of advice how to negotiate that if you haven't already arrived there, but that's a really good use of your time. Okay, when it comes to understanding triangles and squares and circles in a preschool class, or whatever it is, what's excellent, what's like almost excellent, but what's like no way. It's sort of there, but not quite. We actually talk about that at preschool level. When it comes to X, whatever it is, we're going to talk about. So, if you were saying, I'm teaching multiplying binomials, one kid has an 89, one kid has a 90, what is the question you're really asking? Whose future will I deny because I thought I could see a difference between those 2 percentage points? Stop thinking because it has all those tiny little levels, it's more precise. You couldn't be further from the truth. So this is the slide that reminds you, am I hiding behind something that's already in the margin of error? And so my whole thing was trying to sort children, compare them to each other, or was I trying to grade to cultivate children and their talents? Do you remember those 2 scenarios we talked about earlier? So I can't fight for a system that is knowingly falsifying the designation of mastery and sorting children. Yeah.
Please don't take offense to this.
That's okay.
At the middle school, elementary school, and I'll even say high school, and dare I even say college, I don't think futures are built or destroyed based on the difference between 80 and 89.
Okay, I'm not taking offense, but I think you're wrong. I disagree with you. I have seen the damage done, that teachers perceive that there's a difference. Even with 1 percentage point, how about with 5? I am denied this, I'm allowed this, I'm accused of this, I'm kept from this, I'm resourced for this, I'm not.
Again, please don't take offense to this.
I'm not taking offense, don't worry. You could say, Rick, you are having a really bad day and you're a mess. And I would not take offense.
I completely understand this, but I think to become, I completely agree with you to try to get better grades. But I don't think this will ever be an exact science. And I think there is some good in overcoming obstacles in life.
Oh, yeah, sure.
If you think your future is destroyed between 89 and 90, I think there's something wrong with you as an individual that you can't overcome an obstacle. Everyone's going to deal with obstacles.
But then the question is,
how do you overcome?
Why would our institution or our enterprise purposely set up something to create such a dramatic issue?
I guess we're arguing together and against. I think you do the best that you can.
Yeah.
I think you give the benefit of the doubt as best as you can. But we don't live in a perfect world, and to try to be as, I just disagree with that statement.
But I would offer that we would want to aspire to remove those barriers that might limit a kid in some extreme case.
I would agree with you.
Yeah.
Do the best that you
So
can.
we don't want to perpetuate that. We want to be mindful of it. In my classroom, I might have a situation where I have a kid who's an 85 and a kid who's like a 94. Or something that's like a big difference. Am I going to take a second step and go, let me just double check that there really is a significant difference? Or am I just going to not look at it, remain complacent to that, and the chips fall where they fall? I would suggest that the professional, the ethical person, would really investigate the grading practice and see if it's actually creating an accurate report. And the idea that you get into smidgens of percentages is one of the things that actually leads to sorting kids way more. And sorting kids we found to be, in general, destructive or negative or limiting. So if that's an extreme case, just to open your mind to that, I'm okay with it. Is that an extreme case that doesn't happen all the time? Yeah, but it has happened many times. One kid is denied, I don't know if you know this, but some states have in-state tuition for all the valedictorians, all 4 years, or sometimes 5-year programs. And one kid really needed that. He was denied that because you thought you could see a difference from one kid to the other based on 1/10,000th of a point. So life of things turned that way, a life of things gone that way. It is really rather traumatic that we don't get grading right and we just let things go and benefit of the doubt and it's all blurry. So this cannot be perfect, you're exactly right, because we're messy people running a messy thing. But we can't aspire like asymptotes. We can get very close to the axis and the goal. We might never ever achieve that. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so say you and I both teach the same discipline, same
Yeah.
rubric, same everything, right?
Yeah.
Let's say in your class you have a kid who has a 92.4.
92.4.
I have a kid who has a 92.0.
Ah, good.
You had mentioned that you would ask just a series of questions
To see really, maybe the scores and tests got in the way of it. I just want to do like, what do you know here and now at the very last moment of the quarter? Yeah.
But what happens if I ask maybe some questions, but they aren't the same, or maybe,
Right.
you know, I choose a different way to try to determine mastery,
Mhm.
and then you wind up moving your student up, whereas I keep my
Ah,
student
yeah.
down too. Because then you were saying you have to make an executive decision, but that's not always going to be the same between two people.
Yeah.
And then you also mentioned justifying that to parents. And I'm not trying to be arguing, this is just a scenario that came up.
No, this is a great scenario. You're exactly right to ask it.
What do we do?
So think about that. How do we get closer and closer to consistency with my buddies? The same people teach the same thing. Is that we really sit down and we do the proficiency scales for every single major thing we teach. So we always go back to the evidence. So I'm asking different questions of this child, he's asking different questions of the child, but the questions get to the same evidence. Then we can honestly say, yes, you're here versus here. But you and I have already vetted each other quite a bit. We've calibrated the evidence. So one of the things that we've learned is this. When you design, okay, here's the standard, here's the evidence for the proficiency levels, the last thing you do, you're not done. You always design a test together. Because when you design the test, you totally rethink what you thought was evidence of mastery. It really is not one direction, it's like oscillating back and forth. For example, I've designed a test, and I know my standards, my evidence, I go, oh, this is a great question. Wait, it's actually not one of my standards. It is now. I go back and write it in. You rethink, you have clarity. So you can't just say, are we on the same page when it comes to fact versus opinion, or when it comes to graphing inequalities? Are we there yet when it comes to the color wheel in my art class, or whatever it might be with striations as I attach clay or glaze in an art class, whatever it is? Well, we literally have to talk to each other a lot and go, okay, what are you looking for? What am I looking for? Is a phrase, what are your look fors? Literally in the assessment literature, people have look fors. So you and I negotiate that for several weeks or several months. And then we finally say, okay, this would be a 4. This would be a 3. So when I test you privately in the moment, I would be only referencing the evidence that I've already vetted with you. Now, if you're the only one who teaches this in your entire building, no whitening. We invented the internet and telephones. Sometimes they're the same thing. Anyway, we would call colleagues in other schools or our National Subject Standards Association. I have a whole slide coming up. Who do you consult when you're trying to figure out the wording and come up with the evidence? It's coming up later, don't worry, it'll be after lunch. As you do that, I would consult all of that so that I was legit in what we were doing. If I had never calibrated, if I had never talked to my subject colleagues, it would be the Wild West, be all over the place. And you're exactly right. This kid getting advanced, this kid not